Welcome to the Asset Coach and Tax Strategist YouTube channel. If you're a subscriber, thanks so much for subscribing. If you're a first-time viewer, thank you for spending your time here with us. If you like our content, please give us a thumbs up. For you new folks, Asset Coach Tax Strategist YouTube channel is based on the book Economic Termites. This is a book that I wrote a few years ago talking about taxes, inflation, time, laws, and regulations. Also, I wrote a second book called Farming Assets. Those two books is really what this whole channel is about, addressing those situations and how they affect you and I in our ability to grow our wealth. So as an asset coach and tax strategist, my name is Robert Wolf. I am the CEO and founder of Terra Firma Business and Financial Consultants and its affiliates. We have a bunch of companies that we've built out this ecosystem surrounding the basis of what we talk about on this YouTube channel. So if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. We drop episodes every Thursday. Again, if you are, thanks so much. And let's get into this next episode. So if you've been watching me for any period of time or read my books, you know that really a lot of this, pretty much all of this, started with me reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. There's a couple people that I'm very fond of as to their way of thinking. One of them would be Robert Kiyosaki. The other one's Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett just retired after, I think, 100 years running Berkshire Hathaway. So I wanted to talk more about Robert Kiyosaki and what he's really kind of been saying from the get-go of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And one of the reasons why I like his information is he's been very consistent from the very beginning. So and that's the same thing with Warren Buffett. That's what I appreciate. I think in today's days, it's so easy for us to just kind of blow where the wind blows, right? And we see that with politicians. We see that with various things that go on in our lives. Friends, family, and even ourselves when we have different opinions. And am I saying you're not allowed to have an opinion or change your opinion? Not at all. I'm not saying that at all. But when we're talking about a core belief, a core philosophy, like Robert Kiyosaki or even Warren Buffett, then I don't think it's something that you should be swaying back and forth. I don't think it's something you should be changing. It's your core philosophy. And the same is true for what we do here at Terra Firma. It's really kind of the same what we've been talking about on Asset Coach Tax Strategist, is economic termites. This is all based on taxes, inflation, time, laws, and regulations. Now, there's a couple other mini termites, if you will. And as you've heard me say before, laws and regulations, that's our politicians. That's kind of like the queen termite. They really kind of cause a lot of the other issues, the other termites. Debt being one of those termites as well. Now, the thing about debt is taxes. There's not a good and a bad to taxes, unless you're saying, well, Bob, the governments and the cities do have to pay for certain things. That is absolutely true. That is true. But I would say the formalization of how taxes are used, it's really hasn't been for the good, right? But inflation. That's the devaluing of your spending power. I don't necessarily know if there's value there, and that you can try to talk me into saying that that's really good, Bob. Is it a function of economics? It is. Time, well, you can have a great time, you can have a bad time, but the point of time is that it fleets. It's the thing that we can't get back. We can always make money back. We can always, other areas of business, we can always find success and make changes and stuff, but time just keeps going. But our politicians with their decisions really is what affects a lot of these other economic termites, and debt being one of them, where you could have good debt and bad debt, but debt is still debt. Okay. And so this is one of the things that Robert Kiyosaki talks about, is that, personal consumer debt like credit cards, that sort of stuff is not necessarily good. That's not good for you. And Dave Ramsey's correct about that. Now, one of the things that Dave Ramsey's audience, when he says all debt is bad, is because his audience doesn't really have the discipline. The majority of them don't have the discipline, which is why that's his focus. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you get to a level of Robert Kiyosaki and you start talking about good debt leverage, it's still debt. You still got to be mindful of it. You still got to worry about cash flow. You still got to make sure you can meet the responsibilities of that debt. Because the point of debt is that you're borrowing. That means somebody's lending. It's two sides of the coin, right? It's a yin and a yang. So if you are borrowing, who's lending, and what does that look like? How are you going to pay them back? Okay, so if you've watched any of my content, I've done content on a promissory, just the basics of a promissory note. And there's three functions of a promissory note, which is basically debt, right? It's a note that says we're going to promise. It's a loan. So you have to have the amount of the borrowing or the lending, right? So what's the amount we're talking about? Got to have the cost, the interest rate, and you have to have the time period that you're going to pay it back. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Robert Kiyosaki has been very, very open and consistent about what's going on with the U.S. economy and debt, and this whole 38 trillion in U.S. debt is a big, big hot topic right now. And the U.S. debt has always been a hot topic, right? But it seems to be more and more so, right? Now, I've done a couple episodes on it on what does the U.S. Who does the U.S. owe money to? Right. And when we hear about this U.S. debt, we're always thinking it's about other countries, China and all this other. No, we've already talked about this in a couple other videos of ours where it's us. It's us. It is. So I have my notes over here. Let's take a look at it. So pension funds, retirement accounts, insurance companies, banks, mutual funds, central banks, government agencies, they all own U.S. debt. Now you have foreign countries that do as well, right? And that's what these treasury bonds, treasury bills, treasury notes are. Anytime there's a treasury in front of it, it means the government is selling debt, lending it out, and we're borrowing it. And then there's a cost to it, an interest, right? So you have municipal bonds, which are bonds that municipalities, city governments will borrow money from who? You, me, us, and then they're going to pay us back, right? So that's the basis of kind of what this debt's looking like. But, the key here and the thing to understand is that when we keep saying the U.S. can't pay its debt, what we're saying is that they can't pay us back. They can't pay us back, right? And so when you think about government, that's the key. You have a small group of people who run the majority. That's the essential basis from when it was a king running a kingdom, and he had all these folks that in his kingdom. He made all the decisions, and they all just kind of followed along with the mindset that he or she, the king and the queen, were going to protect us, right? But now there was debt to be owed in that relationship, meaning that if the king needed help protecting the kingdom, that was you. You got to pick up your sword, you got to pick up your shield, put on your chainmail, and we got to go to battle and protect the kingdom. Right? Or to be the aggressor because you in your kingdom need other resources from other kingdoms. And that's essentially what happened, right? So you'd have these two battling, and whoever won reaped the rewards. The land, the resources, or whatever the case may be. Okay? Nothing's changed today. It's all still the same. It's kingdoms needing the same stuff, still needing the resources. There's still us, the majority. But I'm really, really tired of hearing people complain about some of the steps and some of the things that are happening with Greenland, with Venezuela, and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, if you want to speak a different language in our country, then you don't belong in our country. You need to go to that country of the language you want to speak. Meaning, if you're okay with China taking us over, go to China. Go see what happens. Go live there. We don't need you here. If you fill in the blank of the country, Okay? The reality is that nothing's changed from my example of the kingdoms to now. It's always been about resources. It's always been about protection. Now, yes, we are man. We're humans. And greed and ego and pride, all those normal sins are going to drive some decisions. But the reality is that our whole idea of globalization was maybe not necessarily a good idea looking at it today, reflecting back on it then. Now, why am I bringing this all up? Well, because when we look at these debts, so let's look at this. 38 trillion. I have my notes over here, so I apologize. So US owes 38 trillion. Japan owes 9 trillion. Okay. The world owes $315 trillion. So the question is asked, who do they owe? Well, there's nobody else on the earth but us citizens, right? The citizens of these countries that have these debts that are owed. So again, our pension funds, retirement accounts, insurance companies, banks, mutual funds, central banks, government agencies own these debts. So what's happening is we are in a position now where we're saying the government can't pay us back. But the government's coming up with solutions to be able to help pay us back. No. They're helping to create solutions to allow our power to continue to be as is. Here, let me explain. What is the most important thing about anything that we have right now? You can look at my background. You can look at the things on the wall, the carpet, the couch, the clothes I'm wearing, yours, the computer we're looking at and going through and talking through, the phones we have. What drives all that stuff? Obviously innovation, right? Majority of it coming from the U.S. and starting at, and that's because of the U.S. mindset of trying to evolve and develop. Okay, because if we didn't care about all this evolution and this developing and trying to make our life better, we would still be cavemen and women sitting around a fire figuring out what this thing is, right? How do I use this stick, right? But we've evolved since then to where we're at today. And what allows us to do that? Well, we don't get imports from other worlds, do we? No, it's all the resources that are here on the earth. God created this for us to have what we need. And we've done an amazing job using this stuff to create what we need and what we want, right? We don't need all the things that we have. We want, therefore we create, and then we turn it into, oh, I need this. I mean, the reality of it is, right? That's how it's all established. But the key is resources. What are these resources? Well, minerals, chemicals, oil, right? So all of these things, gold and these metals and currency, right? There's these values that allow us to be able to create these things that we have. They all have value. Gold has a value, silver, platinum, lithium, uranium, right? They all have a certain value to them, as does oil, natural gas, right? These are all things that we need to create everything we have. So why in the world are we complaining and whining about this stuff? When all of a sudden we have competition and we're worried China's going to take over. Okay, well then when our government makes a decision such as the Venezuela, right? And I'm not making this political. I'm just making this survival. This is about survival, right? So we're at a point in time where China's not going to take their army from China's shores to the US shores. That's not going to happen. Now, without us knowing, right? Well, we'll see it from the very get-go. From the moment they start deploying on their land to the shores, we'll know that. We'll know that. That's the way technology works today. There's no hiding that kind of stuff. Okay. So how's this battle of supremacy going to happen? Well, we thought it was going to be trade, right? This we need China for everything. Well, that's because we gave China everything in this globalization type structure, these trade deals. And COVID really kind of that period of time, 2020, really opened everybody's eyes as to what was going on, right? And we started even a little bit before that, we started walking away from the relationships with China because here's the key. And I've said this before, I've done episodes on China and all this kind of stuff as well, is that what you and I need is what? The stuff to live our life and to speak the language we want to speak and to do the things we want to do, right? We've built these comforts over the last 250 years of being a nation. Right? So when we kind of go through this process, what do we need to be concerned about? Resources. This was the issue. China was very smart and they were gathering resources. They bought US steel companies, right? And we are like, well, that makes sense because we're going to have them build all this stuff for us because it's cheaper for them to do it. So we just like, here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go. And what did China start doing? Stockpiling resources. And then all of a sudden the alarm went off. We're like, wow, we don't own any steel companies anymore. What did we do? And then we start looking at other resources. And what do we do? We're now making decisions. So when we're looking at a lot of this stuff and we're looking at the debt, you don't think that's connected to all these other resources? Yes, there's value. This debt is backed by value, or the perception of value, of fiat value. That's why there's so much conversation about Bitcoin, right? As an asset class. My next episode is going to be talking about more of Robert Kiyosaki and his core understanding has been talking about, and we're going to intertwine Warren Buffett into what he had built through Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, we're going to take the two core philosophies and we're going to blend them into a conversation of what's this mean for you and I. But I wanted to talk about this focus and this conversation of debt and what it's leading to with the current conversation of the Venezuela, Greenland, minerals, resources, and etc. Okay, so stay tuned for our next episode. If you're a subscriber, please, thank you so much for subscribing. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe because every Thursday we drop a new episode. And so you're not going to want to miss this next episode as we start diving into really the reality of how is wealth built and what is going on in current society, current activity. This really, we're seeing a shift. The last time we saw a shift like this, I would probably say when the US left the gold standard. Okay? This is a big change. And before that was probably right after World War II. This is a life-changing shift that we're experiencing right now. And we need to be aware of what's happening and what's going on. Okay, so thank you so much for spending your time here, investing your time here. Be prepared, hit that subscribe button, and get ready for this next episode. Thank you so much and make it a great day.